Hey everybody, this is Matthew Soltesiak, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast, part of the Minute Media Podcast Network. This season, it's all grit. I speak with a variety of guests and interview key players, gaining more insight on what makes this team go. The Detroit Lions are now in a new, grittier era, and we look beyond just the kneecaps when it comes to the analysis. Welcome to another episode. In this episode, we preview the Detroit Lions Week 12 contest against the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts are in second place in the AFC South and fresh off a 1-point victory over the New York Jets to snap a 3-game skid. Plus, Anthony Richardson is back at the helm. We'll talk about the matchup, what we expect out of the Lions going into this game as well. We'll also talk standings and playoff tickets, that and more. Let's get to it, Lions fans.
This is Trevor Nowaski, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast.
Joining me today is Coach Jerry Angers, former Michigan High School Coach of the Year, as well as Coach of the Week by the Detroit Lions, and current Scouting and Training Director for Bull Rush Sports. Coach, good to have you here.
Glad to be here, Matt.
And of course, joining Coach and I is the one, the only James Cook, the senior sports writer for the Traverse City Record Eagle. I say the one and only. There are some other James Cooks out there. You might have known of one on Buffalo, but you can hear this James Cook on the Get Around podcast as well. That drops on Mondays. James, good to have you here with us.
Always good to be here. Looking forward to win number 10 this week.
All right. Well, before we preview that matchup, because I think we are looking forward to that win as well, James, let's wrap up with some final thoughts from last game. James, I think you want to get us started on this one.
Yeah, it was interesting. I saw some people being really critical of Dan Campbell challenging that call in the fourth quarter after the Lions were up big time. But the thing is that I think that goes perfectly into what he's been doing the whole time. He's showing the players that he doesn't expect them to let the foot off the gas, so he's not going to let the foot off the gas. And I think that's part of the reason why the players love him so much, especially that cornerback who got a 15-yard completion taken off of his record, essentially. I mean, these are the kind of things. I mean, players nowadays look at what their PFF scores are. I guarantee you almost everybody does. And, they want to see what people are saying about them. And Dan Campbell just helped take a negative away from somebody's PFF score, or and Campbell has always been looking out for his players on things like that, them getting the bonuses in their contract, with Reynolds a year or two ago, and getting those catches and all that kind of stuff like that. I don't think it was out of character for him at all.
No, I agree with you on that one. I don't even know why people are talking about it. If something wasn't a catch, you challenge it. I don't care if you're up by 50 or down by 5. The game is the game. And you know what? Everybody should want the game to be as accurately officiated and called as possible. And last time I checked, it's a game. It's not, a donation. Here, we'll give you 15 yards because, like you said, those stats do matter at different elements of the game. And, the players check that as well. So I think this criticism is, I don't know. I don't know where it comes from. I think it comes from somebody looking for something to talk about. What do you think, Coach?
Oh, there's no doubt. It's funny. I had brunch with a lady yesterday talking about some things, and she's a big Packers fan, and we're having lunch and we're talking, and she says, "Hey, can I ask you a question? I know you know football. Why did the Lions not sub their starters out earlier?" And because it seems, and I said, "Oh, so you're one of those ones that are jumping on the bandwagon that we're running the score up." I said, you got to understand. We have 48 players. This isn't high school and college where there could be 50 to 100 sitting on the sidelines. I said, let me give you an example. The Lions have 3 offensive linemen, 3 sub-offense linemen, 5 play. Do we play with only 3 guys? I said, I'm glad you asked that question so you can go around and tell the rest of the people that are complaining about the Lions and stuff that there's not a lot Dan Campbell can do. And we talked about this too. It comes up with injuries. So whether it's the challenge or whether it's subbing people out, it's football, guys. That's just the way it is. We know that. We talked about it. So.
All right. And James, you brought up another great point is don't take your foot off the gas. No. The Lions didn't take their foot off the gas in the NFC Championship game last year, but they saw firsthand how quickly things can change. I still remember a game decades ago, the Minnesota Vikings with Randy Moss and Chris Carter were annihilating, I believe it was the Atlanta Falcons. And so, I mean, it wasn't even the end of the second quarter, and it was like a 35-6 game or something. And so then it was, do they sub people out? And they kind of were like, all right, well, the thing is that Atlanta started coming back in that game. And one thing people don't always remember is it's not a light switch that you can automatically turn on and turn off. When things are going, they're going. But if you take a break from it, it might not turn on just that easily because the defense might do something different or something just might not click. So, you can't take your foot off the gas. You got to make sure the game is won. And it was only early into the fourth quarter when they, it wasn't even like 5 minutes left in the game. It was early in the fourth quarter when they subbed out, which for a professional game, I would be shocked if anybody's subbing in the third quarter.
Nobody's doing it.
All right. Well, James, talk to us a little bit more about this score.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's this one Twitter handle that keeps track of the final scores of NFL games and what ones have happened before or not. It's called Scoreagami.
Okay.
And so 52-6 had never happened before in NFL history. Like that one particular score had never happened before in history.
All right. Well, and we'll see what happens with Jacksonville after that score because, Doug Peterson was brought in there and everybody thought after what he did in Philadelphia, he was going to help Trevor Lawrence. They had some success at first. He helped turn things around, but it's obvious to say, or it's needless to say, the last year and a half haven't gone their way. And so they're on a bye this week. So we'll see what happens with Peterson.
I'm surprised at all that they haven't made a move, given all the rumblings. And your bye week would be the perfect time if you're going to make a move in season to do it. So maybe they're not going to make this move during the season at all. Maybe they're just going to wait until the offseason.
Yeah.
This is the story of the one who, as a maintenance specialist for a historic high-rise, knows that vintage charm historically needs constant attention. Which is why when it's time to upgrade turn-of-the-century mechanicals, they turn to Grainger. With easy access to 1 million-plus products and the scale to deliver when and where you need them. The right tools and supplies are never far away. So the one can keep that vintage building running like new. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
All right, well, let's move our conversation back to the NFC. Let's start with the NFC North. You guys, even though the Bears, they lost, didn't lose by much, but they did lose. And so they have dropped to 4-6. The NFC North is still the only division where every team has a positive point differential. That's pretty incredible, considering we are 10 games in for everybody in the division. Now, the Bears are at 4-6, Packers 7-3, Minnesota 8-2, Lions are 9-1, having defeated both Minnesota and Green Bay on the road. Coach, I want to start with you, then we'll go to you, James. How are you feeling about the Lions and the division at this point?
Well, we know it's tough and we still have some head-to-heads that we have to, accomplish in there. But, I was kind of looking at the schedules today. The Vikings have the Cardinals, the Falcons. I think Kirk Cousins plays for the Falcons as he's coming home. The Bears,
game.
The Vikings, the Packers, and the Vikings. So I'm sorry, the Packers and the Lions. It'd be hard for the Vikings to play the Vikings unless we had inter-squad scrimmage because we have enough bodies to do that. But anyways,
right.
So that's a tough schedule. I mean, there's some teams in there that can help us out in that situation. Then you look at the Packers. They got the Dolphins, then us. They got the Seahawks. They got the Saints. Then they got the Vikings, and then they got the Bears again. So I mean, there's some tough games in there that could help us out and get a couple one or two more losses there. And of course, if we take care of our own business at home, all we have to do is take care of our business at home. We won the division, right? I mean, if we split the Bears and win our division at home, we already beat the, so take care of the home games and it's ours, but let's go 1-0 this week.
That's right. And I know that's your mantra, Coach. I know we're doing stuff outside your comfort zone, but I appreciate you playing along and doing the research on this. But you're right. The Bears play the Packers, and one of these days the Bears are going to beat the Packers. And so maybe it'll happen this next time. But the Lions, if they take care of the division and they take care of their home games, it honestly, the division looks really good at this point. I feel very comfortable with the type of team we have and the way the division is looking. James, how are you on this?
Yeah, I mean, right now there would be three teams from our division in the playoffs. Chicago being the only one that's not in. And I think Chicago is going to get better and better as the season goes along too. I mean, Caleb Williams is only going to get better as a quarterback. But they made the changes at the with the coaching staff already with a new offensive coordinator, and you kind of saw some differences last week where he was getting the ball out a lot faster than he had been earlier in the season. And that had been one of his downfalls, was just taking a lot of sacks and just running around there and taking way too long, putting his linemen in bad situations. And the last week in that game, he was getting rid of the ball pretty darn quick, and they looked a lot better. So I think that they're not going to be a team that's going to completely go away. I don't think they're in the same stratosphere as the other three, but I don't think they're going to completely be somebody that they can just run over for the rest of the season either. But as of right now, the Lions are in the driver's seat completely, and the other three are in the back seat.
Yeah, the Lions have pole position. The division's not going to be easy. The Vikings defense is playing great. They've won 3 in a row now, even though the Packers, they're up and down, back and forth. There's a lot of talent on that team. And we know what happened last time the Packers came to Detroit. So we know Campbell will have them ready. I still like the odds of the Lions winning the division based on how they're playing and the fact that they have those 2 road victories. Now, we're not going to talk about how far teams go in the playoffs because every week, coach, that is the legit 1 week at a time mantra. This isn't baseball, best of 5, best of 7 stuff. But if we're looking at the seeding, the getting that home field advantage, you want the 1 seed to get the bye or the 2 seed. That way you get home field up until the championship game, unless the number 1 seed's out. Last year, the Lions had the 3 seed, if people have forgotten that. And because Dallas lost to the Packers, we got to host the second round, but we had to go out to San Francisco for the championship game. Right now, the Lions are in the 1 seed. The Philadelphia Eagles are at 8-2 in the 2 seed. And then you've got the Minnesota Vikings right behind them at 8-2. Then the Washington Commanders are 7-4. The Packers are 7-3. James, let's start with you. What's the NFC North looking like, and which teams do you think are most likely to challenge for that number 1 seed? Is it Philadelphia? Is it someone from our own division? Is it Washington? What are you seeing, or what are you thinking at this point?
I mean, I would think it would be Philadelphia, just given their division. I mean, the Cowboys seem to be a mess right now. The Giants are a mess. So that division, just they're going to get some good easy wins there. Whereas Minnesota's not. They're going to have some pretty good battles inside the division in there. So between those two, I think Philadelphia is the closer of those two.
All right. I think Philadelphia is probably the better team of those two at this point. I think a big part of it is probably the quarterback play with Jalen Hurts versus Sam Darnold. Coach, what are you seeing out of the hunt for the number 1 seed?
Yeah, I think Philly's the team that we most have to worry about. Within our division, I mean, those guys, like, again, we went through the schedules already. They have some big games they still have to play. And if they overtake us on that, God bless them. On that situation, then they deserve it. I think Philly's the one we got to worry about. But again, we'll take care of our own business, and we ain't got nothing to worry about. 1-0.
1-0. And taking care of our own business, sometimes we can root for other guys. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And this week, I think most Detroit Lions fans can root for Matthew Stafford because the Rams are playing the Eagles this week. And again, you look at the overall NFL standings, that NFC West, their best team is the Arizona Cardinals at 6-4. Everyone else is sitting at 5-5. And I'm not saying none of those teams will be dangerous in the playoffs. Plenty of them will be, but they're not going to challenge for that number 1 seed. So if we can get Matthew Stafford and the Rams to beat the Eagles, that would be nice. And then the following week, Coach, call out to some of your friends out there in Baltimore. See if the Ravens can take care of the Eagles as well. So they got a couple tough games, but you're right. I don't know who's the bigger mess, Dallas or the New York Giants right now. They're both on 5-game losing streaks. The Giants are benching their quarterback, so they don't have to pay him if he gets hurt. Otherwise, Philly's got a pretty good schedule going up. There's 7 games left, guys. I think if the Lions go 5-2, they would finish 14-3, and I think that gives you the top overall seed. And considering the way we've started, I do think Philly's the only team that challenges for that number 1 seed. And again, we saw how hard it was for teams to play at Ford Field last year. Would love it if the entire playoff run goes through Ford Field. So, speaking of playoffs, and that's what we're talking about, the Detroit Lions sent out playoff ticket invoices to season ticket holders yesterday. And, Coach, we talked about this a year and a half ago. I said, if the Lions ever make it to a Super Bowl, this was a year and a half ago. We hadn't even qualified for the playoffs at that point. I said those playoff tickets would be in a different stratosphere. They'd be the most expensive Super Bowl tickets ever. And last year, every Detroit Lions playoff game was more expensive than any other playoff game. And I think it was a wild card round, or I think the wild card round. You could have gone to all 3 other games for the same price as just going to the Lions game. So I'm just going to say this. If you thought the tickets in San Francisco were expensive last year for the NFC Championship game, if it's Philadelphia against Detroit in Detroit, you are going to see NFC Championship ticket prices like you've never seen before. I'm just calling that right now. Everything adds up. The hype, the determination, everything. Would you be on track with that, Coach?
Oh, heck yeah. Especially with those Philadelphia fanatics. They don't care. They're going to pay anything, What's Papalo? Was that his name? He'd be up in the upper deck spending big money for that. He doesn't care. He wants to walk on again. But yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
Plus you're not in that long distance travel. You're within driving distance. So, it would be huge, but we'll see.
Yeah, James, people are already putting these things on StubHub, and the upper level ones are going, I want to say for the NFC Championship game, north of $1,000 for the upper level ones. And I don't know where they stop and where they go, and those prices would all fluctuate. And it's all hypothetical at this point because nobody's won anything to host anything yet. But as soon as I got the letter, I guess people are putting stuff up there.
Yeah, it makes me wonder how the logistics of that works, that you can sell a ticket that doesn't exist yet for $1,000. So what happens when if that doesn't happen?
Well, actually, I can tell you what happens because I had purchased tickets to the Detroit Lions Dallas Cowboys game last year, but because the Cowboys lost to the Packers, I got fully refunded. So I hedged my bets on that because people didn't know for sure the Lions were going to be playing the Cowboys. And so those tickets weren't sky high. It was like, oh, the Cowboys. I mean, they've got so many seats in that place. And I don't know. The ticket prices were a lot cheaper in Dallas than they were in Detroit, which is why, and we'll get to this, a lot of Lions fans are going to Indianapolis this weekend. So, and somebody we know is going. We'll get to that soon, folks. All right, well, let's talk about transactions, injury updates. We got a lot going on this week. We know Alex Anzalone got put on IR, and then Ifeatu Melifonwu got activated from IR so he could get put back on IR, and he can come back in 4 weeks, I believe. And so that was a procedural thing they had to do. And James, you've got some more information on the transactions that took place.
Yeah, well, and then they assigned David Long, linebacker, to the practice squad, formerly of the Miami Dolphins, and then before that, Tennessee Titans. Good veteran signing for the Lions. Good run stopper and thumper at linebacker. Not the same linebacker as Alex Anzalone is. Not known for his coverage ability, which was the reason why the Dolphins let him go. But he was their leading tackler last year. Not the same David Long who played at Michigan and ironically plays for the Colts right now.
Okay.
But they also activated Broderick Martin from the injured reserve. They signed Kayvon Merriweather to the practice squad and released Eric Hallett from the practice squad. Merriweather is a guy that played at Iowa. So another Iowa guy on the Lions. And he played for the Buccaneers the last 2 seasons after being an undrafted free agent. Mostly on special teams, but he did have 2 starts and made like 20 some tackles in the last 2 years. So he's got a little bit of playing experience. But Long is somebody who I think will be elevated right away and be a guy that they can play on early downs and can play special teams as well.
Yeah, the David Long signing is kind of huge if you really think about it, because he started like 6 or 7 games this season. A player like that becoming available mid-season, and Coach Campbell talked about, he's on the practice squad. They're going to look for him to contribute on special teams right away, and then potentially work him into that linebacking rotation. Coach, I know he's not the player he was 2 years ago. James brought that up as well, but he's a guy that was starting 6 games this year. This isn't like you're scouring the waiver wire, not even the waiver wire, the free agent wire to see who might want to come out of retirement or whatnot. This is a guy who can come in, and once he learns the system, he's already in great shape. He could be an impact much quicker than you might have thought possible.
113 tackles, right, James?
Yep.
113. Let me say that again. 113 tackles last year.
Wow.
Okay, started 6 games this year. I watched some film. I think I sent you guys some clips on him. He's a Mike linebacker in the Detroit system. Hello, downhill. They changed coordinators, so the pass concept that they wanted this guy to do that was out of his wheelhouse. The way AG designs defenses and puts guys like Trevor Nowatzki in Houston and Pascal, and I can go on into positions to where they make plays and they're 28 or 16 or 29 plays. This guy's going to fit into that in a heartbeat. Our base defense with him, I'm loving it. I can't wait till he puts the Lions uniform on. And we are biased, but it's a steal. I'm sorry. I just at this late of the year, right? I mean, that's my gut feeling on it.
Well, Coach, I appreciate you saying that a scheme was changed in Miami and that he didn't fit the new scheme, because we've seen that with some players around the league. I believe the Packers got rid of a guy because he didn't fit what they were doing anymore. And part of the reason the Lions probably got Long is because Seattle released a linebacker. He went to waivers. Miami claimed that linebacker off waivers and then got rid of Long. And so I'm agreeing with you. This is a steal because you're not even poaching a practice squad player. You're taking an active roster player who became available. And I'm kind of surprised nobody put a waiver claim in on him.
Yeah, they would have had to assume, if they put a waiver claim in on him, they would have had to assume his full contract, which would be $5.5 million prorated over the rest of the season. But still, for a starting level linebacker, that's not an exorbitant amount of money. It would have been all minus signing fees or signing bonus that's already been paid out. So it would have been less than that, and then prorated, so even less than that. So it would have been probably half of that or less. But still, now they can sign him for the veteran minimum, probably is in most in-season signings are bet minimum. So that's a lot of some savings there in cap space that they can roll over. The Merriweather guy is a similar thing. I mean, he's a guy who had been playing for a year and a half in the NFL, 25 games of experience with 2 starts for Tampa Bay, plays a lot of special teams. He could be a guy that could be elevated too here and there for special teams usage at a minimum. And he's a Michigan native. He's from Romulus, played for Belleville in high school before going to Iowa. So he's a good body, I think, to add there too at the special teams, especially if they lose Melifonwu. That's another safety that they don't have.
For sure. Great research, great digging on all that stuff, James. All right, it's time to look and see what we need to know about our opponent. Let's start by hearing from Coach Dan Campbell.
Colts, good team, very much in the mix. We talked about playoff and that division. This team plays hard. They got talent. I think Shane's done a heck of a job over there. We had a lot of crossover tape over 2 years. I think they do a real good job. And then what they've done with Richardson now that he's come back, especially last week against the Jets, they've really opened up Richardson. So he's got the ability to throw it downfield. He's strong. He's big. He can run. And these receivers are dangerous. And obviously the back, he's, I think it all starts with him.
All right, guys. I mean, Campbell doesn't mince words. I've said that many a times. He recognizes the talent over on the other side of the ball there, especially Anthony Richardson, right? He got benched for a little bit. Sometimes the best thing you do is get a rest. You get to come back and take a look at things. And we also know that Jonathan Taylor is an incredible running back. So the Colts, so far this year, How are they doing? Again, I said it earlier in the opening. They lost multiple games in a row, but came back and beat the Jets. James, what are you seeing out of the Colts so far?
They're kind of like the Titans and the Jaguars a little bit. As far as they come in with a losing record, but nobody's really been. Those teams came into at least the Detroit game having not been blown out during the season. The Lions then, blew out Tennessee and Jacksonville, obviously, but they had been in tight games through the whole season. It's kind of the same with the Colts. The biggest loss they've had, the only loss they've had by more than one score was Buffalo by 10. Everything else has been one score or less of games that they've lost, and everything that they've won has been by one touchdown or less. So they're a team that can stay in games. And with a quarterback like Richardson, he could throw 3 interceptions, he could run for 3 touchdowns. You never know what you're going to get from week to week. So they're a team that can be dangerous.
All right. Well, let's start with that offense, coach. You got some weapons there. You already dissected some film because Anthony Richardson is going to be a challenge for the Lions on defense because he's different than Mac Jones. Yes, he is similar to some other guys we have faced this year. If we are looking, though, at the Lions offense defense against their offense, the Colts have the 19th ranked offense for points, 16th rushing offense, 21st passing offense. The Lions defense ranks number 1. No, I'm sorry. The Lions defense ranks number 5 in points allowed, 17.7. Got your scouting report put together there, coach. That thing is a piece of artwork. So I want to make sure I do it right. Our rushing defense is allowing less than 100 yards a game, and the passing defense about 230. So what's it going to take? What type of threat is this Indianapolis offense going to put forth?
Well, I mean, Jonathan Taylor's a good back, 673 yards. We know that. Richardson last week decided to run the ball a little more. I kind of like seeing a quarterback, we talked about, he got the angry run award. He ran a guy over at the goal line. That's probably what you don't want on your quarterback. But I think they're turning him loose into that because I think what they're trying to do is to tell him not to run and they want him to be a pocket, passing quarterback, and that his, forte was he likes to run the football, wants to run the ball, and they let him get back into the game. So I think and plus him sitting on the sidelines viewing things and watching things and stuff like that, I think has really helped out for him. He's a talent, and they're going to be fired up. It's in Indianapolis. They're going to be fired up to beat us. He's got, Pierce has 590, Pittman's got 412. 412 receiving yards. So they have a lot of weapons, enough weapons to offset us. Okay. But I'm going to throw a couple things at you, which I think, okay, they're first in the league. Okay. With 31%, more than 15-yard passes downfield. So 31% of the times they throw it 15 or more downfield. Okay. They're first in air yards per attempt, 11.6. Okay. All right. You guys follow me? So everything above that, they're first in those 10+ yard throws. They're first in the league in those 10+ yard throws.
Yeah.
Last week, he threw no throws to the left side 10 or plus yards. Okay. So middle on the left side, which on the time the plays before that they were throwing that. I didn't have time to go back to see if that's where their interceptions were, with him throwing the deep ball to his left, because why all of a sudden did they change that this week and last week? So I think that's something AG is going to find. I guarantee they're looking at that going, okay, so what does that do for us is you can sag. And now my positive about that is with all those deep throws, as well as we talked about them keeping them in the pocket. Let me say it again. All those deep throws, we're going to say it again. All those deep throws, we have 11 interceptions from our safeties. Throw the deep throw, dude. Because what's their new nickname? Don't they have a new nickname?
James? Is there an official nickname for the safeties?
I don't know that they had a nickname, did they?
I thought it was Thunder and Attack or Steal and Rob, or look that up. I thought they just came up with
the meme I saw posted on Twitter was Seek and Destroy, because he had their names like in the Metallica
Okay.
fine.
So yeah. So let's go seek and destroy on that. So my point is, if they're going to do that, and then if there's a concern with him throwing to his left deep, that takes those deep shots. That's only 2/3 of the field now. Okay.
Yep.
And let me say it again. We have the two best safeties. And if they're only going to run 2/3 of the field, doesn't that put one in each third? Even though it doesn't work that way, guys. But my point is, those are things that I've noticed, going through and looking at, with them. They're going to try to establish a run against us. Nobody's done it yet. Okay. And we're going to shut it down. And if we can turn him into that, he's going to have a problem with it. Those two things we went over film wise, if AR is going to run with the ball, okay, we've been doing a great job of keeping guys in. Of course, we keep hearing that, the Lions have a tough time with running quarterbacks. Okay. Yeah. That was last year, guys. Okay.
Well,
right?
and you know what, Coach, right? Every team has a challenge when they
Yes.
face a running quarterback, not just the Lions. Now, Anthony Richardson is averaging 5.4 yards a carry.
Mhm.
And so that's a pretty darn good rushing average for a quarterback. And so that does show he has some mobility. And just to, I guess, give you guys a little bit of a reference, Wheels is only averaging 1.8 yards a carry. Wheels is Jared Goff, of course, if you weren't sure of that.
Yeah.
So I know not a direct comparison, but I had to, give a Jared Goff shout there. But, Coach, we talked about trying to keep that pocket there and pressure him without busting the seams open on it.
Mhm.
James, if we can do that, this receiving core has actually been somewhat balanced. They've got a few different guys. Actually got 4 different guys have kind of been contributing here. What are you seeing out of the rest of this offense outside of just Jonathan Taylor?
Yeah, well, last week they beat the Jets, who have a pretty solid defense, or at least I think good personnel. I don't know that they're maybe maximizing it quite enough, but they have pretty good personnel on that defense. We saw last year they were one of the better defenses in the whole league, and the Colts started 3 rookies against them last week and did pretty decent. So Bernard Raymond may be back this week. I don't know. He missed last week with a knee injury. He's one of their tackles. Fire up chips. But so we'll see how that line looks this week, because I hadn't seen a Colts injury report released yet today, so I don't know how likely Raymond is to play. But the Colts are one of the worst teams in the league in terms of protecting the ball. I mean, they have 18 turnovers this year. They've got the second worst time of possession in the league, and that's a big part of the reason why. And like Jerry said, they are one of the best teams in the league at generating explosive plays, which they define as a 12-yard run or a 16-yard completion or more. They're third in the league in that area, and they're also so they're one of those teams that can get those big plays. I don't know that they're necessarily going to be a team that's just going to move the ball down the field on Lions. As far as their drives that are going to be successful are going to be ones that have big plays in them, not ones that just get 5 yards and 6 yards and 5 yards and 6 yards, like you see the Lions do with Sonic and Knuckles, and then the throwing underneath to St. Brown, where they just eat you to death by 5 or 10 yards at a time.
Yeah, it seems like those explosives are a big part of the Colts offense. And again, maybe it's some of the inexperience that makes it harder for them to move down consistently. And good news against those explosives is Carlton Davis was a full participant in practice. So he didn't have any setbacks seemingly after the game, playing the game with a heavily wrapped hand because of that broken thumb. And so I think it's going to be fun to see the Lions secondary go up against these guys and see how well they can defend somebody who's going to be a step up from what they faced last week in this. Coach, what did you want to add?
Well, just off of that, I just went back and checked out another thing. Off of those deep left throws coming into last week's game, he was 9 for 23, okay, for 217 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception.
Okay.
So there's not a lot of numbers there, but so it's just weird that he kind of stayed away from that. And I'm trying to think who the Jets corner would be on that side, but I think they flip corners. Is that where Sauce is at? Or
It'd be Sauce Gardner, yeah.
be Sauce on that side, so it looks like they threw away from them. So which brings up to that, they're going to probably throw to the field where Arnold is in a way, or they may try Davis because of the bad hand. So that could be a reason to deny, and I'll guarantee the Lions found that and said, oh, they didn't throw at Sauce once, but see if they try to pick on Arnold, I think they're going to lose. He's just
Sauce is one of those corners that doesn't travel. He just plays one side of the field and then he stays there.
Good call. So that's probably exactly what it is. But again, let's go.
Yeah. And the Lions defense right now, their passing defense does rank 27th in the NFL. So it will be interesting. And again, that's where numbers don't tell you the whole story. I'm loving our secondary at this point. I think you guys are as well. But yeah, I kind of look forward to seeing what we do against them. And can we get some pressure up there? Just enough pressure to make Richardson want to get rid of the ball a little quicker. Well, let's switch over to the other side of the ball. The offense for the Lions against the Indianapolis defense. I mean, the way things have been going, it's not a shock to tell you the Lions are number one in points scored in the NFL. Their total offensive yards is number 3. They're 3rd in rushing, 6th in passing. And they're 4th in red zone efficiency, going up against the 19th ranked defense for points. Their total defense, though, is 28th in the league. They're 28th in rush defense, 26th in pass defense. Those numbers do not bode well for the Colts, and they are what is it? 16th in red zone efficiency stopping. So the Lions just came off a historic performance here, James. I mean, what are we going to see this week?
Well, I mean, we know that Goff has been very efficient. I mean, that's pretty evident to anybody who's watched the Lions very much this season. What's kind of amazing, though, is that through 10 games, he's thrown 200 yards at least to 7 different receivers.
I want to say that sounds pedestrian, but then somebody might call him a civilian, and I would not want Jared Goff to be called a civilian because, I mean, don't get me wrong, civilians are great, okay? But that's a label if somebody's earned something else. I don't know. I'm sorry. I interrupted you, James. Keep going.
No, that's fine. I don't know when that became an insult.
Yeah.
Right.
What is a civilian in football? Anyway, never mind. Guy makes way more money than us, and I don't know how.
Yeah. But the Lions outgained last week. They outgained Jacksonville by 475 yards. And we came in saying that, that their defense wasn't awful.
Right.
That's the largest differential in a single NFL game since 1979. So when most of us were adolescents or younger. Kevin Zeitler had the second best PFF grade among all guards last week, over 90. And for the season, he's 3rd among guards. I think that the Lions have to look at locking him up for a couple more years and extending him. But the Indy's defense, the strength of its defense is its defensive tackles. Grover Stewart and DeForest Buckner, both top 20 of the defensive tackles in PFF rankings. They brought in their only major free agent signing last year was a good backup defensive tackle. And Joe Flacco. Like, other than that, they didn't do a whole lot in free agency. They, like the Lions, invested a lot of their salary cap in re-signing their own good young players to longer term contracts. But they do have good defensive tackles, and then at corner, Kenny Moore is one of the better corners in the league this season. Kind of unknown, not a household name like Sauce Gardner or anybody, but he's having a very, very good season. Aside from those areas, they don't really have any, I would say, strengths in their defense, but they also don't have a weakness. Like, they've got pretty good players all over on that defense. So finding a weakness is going to be a little more difficult.
All right, well, let me start on the offensive line a minute, James, because you brought up Kevin Zeitler. And we often just say, you hear people say, oh, the Lions offensive line is so good, it's so good. But the Kevin Zeitler move, man, I mean, and it's not just the Kevin Zeitler move. We have to give Graham Glasgow some credit on his move too, because he went from right tackle to left tackle to fill in where Jonah Jackson was, because Zeitler is a right guard. I said, yeah, right guard to left guard.
Yeah.
And then Zeitler's a right guard. So they kept him in his natural position. So you got Glasgow from right guard to center to left guard. I mean, this guy's been so versatile, and he moved over to this other position here to the left side so that Zeitler could come in. And our offensive line is better than last year. And Jonah Jackson was solid last year, coach. I mean, again, the Zeitler move has turned out to be better than expected, right?
Oh, for sure. For sure. And knock on wood. Okay. How many games did we miss last year in the guard spot with injury?
Yeah.
And I don't want to bring that up because what happens when we start talking about that stuff, but that was just a gigantic move. And for Graham to go from his best position to flip to the left side. And Graham also filled in at center for us this year. So, those are just things. It's just been positive. And Jonah's having his problems out in LA. And so I think it's just a great move. And I totally agree with James. I said it, that sign him, bring him in, keep him. I know the Ravens fans were, he's getting a little up there in the tooth, but he's pretty good. And I know they're missing him pretty bad because he has just been a great addition, for this team, not as an athlete, but as a person and as a player, as a human being.
Yeah. And the offensive line is helping with that running game. We know that. But here's another thing to look at. Yeah, you guys probably already know this, but Jahmyr Gibbs is number 5 in the NFL in rushing yards right now at 796 yards. And what makes it more impressive is his teammate David Montgomery has 595. He ranks 21st. But the numbers that are jumping out to me, and 4.3 yards a carry for Montgomery, 6.0 for Gibbs. Some of those ones for Montgomery, he can't run anymore because he's already made his way into the end zone at that point. He's got 10 touchdowns, right? So that average could be higher if he was a little further out from the end zone. But here's the number that jumps out to me. Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley each have 197 carries right now. That's 64 carries each more than Gibbs has at 133, and it is exactly 60 more than Montgomery has at 137. Coach, Josh Jacobs has 176 for Green Bay. Bijan Robinson, who has fewer yards than Jahmyr Gibbs, has 34 more carries. So we talked about this. From the first day of the season, you are not 100% until the season ends. I'm just thinking about the wear and tear on each of these Lions running backs, and thinking that can only help us when late December and January come around for the health factor, right?
Oh yeah, especially their legs are going to be under. They're going to have a little more juice in it. Derrick Henry, he's kind of an anomaly on that situation. That dude's a freaking beast. He doesn't take as many hits as those other guys. He does deliver punishment, but anytime you can, save some legs in that situations, and then go to how many times they've been hit, how many times now go to their pass reception yards, and you add all those in there, and then you look at all the different hits, and they don't take. Monty takes a ton of hits, but actually I should say Monty delivers a ton of hits. I don't want to say takes. Where Gibbs doesn't get banged up as much. So it's gonna pay dividends down the line, and we know that. And we can run a hot hand. We can run a hot hand. If it's outside, inside, outside, or outside, inside, we can run a hot hand where those guys are limited. Even though, Barkley's, we're not comparing them. All we know is we have 2 healthy guys compared to 1 healthy guy in the other places.
Right, exactly. And we saw in a game earlier this season when Montgomery got banged up, you've got Jahmyr to come right in, or if something else happens, vice versa. So it gives you that much more comfortableness that you're not dropping down to a true number 2 or number 3 guy right away if something happens. So, James, anything you want to add about the run offense or the pass offense for the Lions?
It'll be good.
All right, Coach, you're good as well.
Well, you want to talk about their defense?
The Colts defense, James brought up a little bit, but you definitely add some more. I don't have much on that one.
Okay, so let me throw some numbers at you. 32.5% they play base. Okay, 65.7% they play nickel. Okay, Laporta's coming back, correct?
Yeah, so he did practice, full
Okay,
participant
so
today.
again, we talked about this last week. 65.7%. Pressures, they like 58, almost 59% is a 5-man pressure, and 32, almost 33% is a 6-man pressure. Okay, so there's no base pressures. There's no just 4 guys with max coverage. They're going to be bringing an extra guy. Okay, so
Okay.
let's talk about that. You know, he said their D line's pretty good. Now, Kenny Moore is probably their best corner. Okay, or definitely is their best corner. But I'm going to throw a couple numbers at you. Okay, Kenny Moore has played wide cornerback 150 reps this year. Okay, you following me? He has played slot corner 346 reps.
Okay. So twice
Okay.
as much
So
there
when
versus
he
the other.
leaves, when Kenny Moore goes inside to that nickel spot or that slot corner spot, which is probably to cover a tight end, which could be to come in and try to cover St. Brown, right? Because he's their best corner. We're going to move St. Brown around. We'll bring him on the inside. We'll put him in the middle. We'll put him on the other side. We'll motion him. Okay. So then that brings Samuel Womack in, and he becomes the wide corner with 382 reps. Okay. So Kenny Moore is definitely their best cover guy. And they're not. So what are they going to do if St. Brown goes? So who's going to cover JMO?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
just, I mean, serious. And again, I don't know how they're going to do this, but are you going to put Womack on JMO and then you're going to bring Kenny Moore into the slot corner to cover him, to cover that, to cover St. Brown? And then is he going to come in and bounce in to cover Laporta? And then they're going to use the safety over top to cover St. Brown? Okay. And so, and then you're going to go to a 5-man blitz, a 5-man pressure, or a 6-man pressure on those situations. Now, their coverages, let's talk about their coverages. So their coverages on that, they'll go 32, almost 33% cover 1. That's probably in their 5 or 6-man. Okay.
Okay.
And then they'll go cover 3, 27% of the time. Okay. So that's probably out of their 5-man pressure, because that's going to be their max coverage. Okay. You guys
Okay.
follow me? That's the best coverage they can have. So now you're putting more into that slot spot. If they're going to go to that cover 1, if they're going to go to that cover 3, then they're going to man underneath, and he's going to have to follow them. They're in trouble.
Yeah.
Again, they got some players. I'm just saying, by the way they're showing this, that's what Brad Johnson is looking right now and going, okay, Kenny Moore, oh, you're going to be in slot corner this time? JMO, Laporta, that's so. Anyways, just some good numbers to look at and to kind of identify what's going to happen and how it translates throughout that game.
Awesome. That's some really great breaking down of the way the defense looks for the Indianapolis Colts. We know they're not ranked very high in pass defense, and you gave us some insight as to how the Lions might attack that.
Yeah.
Let's go to major storylines or the unexpected. It's not really a major storyline, but Jared Goff is not the NFC Player of the Week. He is not. 400 yards. Was it 4 touchdowns? A perfect quarterback rating. Not good enough to be offensive player of the week. Instead, I went to Taysom Hill. He had some decent numbers: 8 catches for 50 yards, 7 runs for 138 yards, and 3 touchdowns. But I do think he had a couple turnovers in that game. So I think he should have won unique player of the week, not NFC offensive player of the week. But that's okay. Like we've talked about before, Coach, that's not the award Jared Goff is looking for, right? The award is the team award at the end of the season. That's a trophy. So, James, I think you've got something else, another storyline or something unexpected.
Well, one little things I look at every week for this when we do our prep is I look over the other team's roster and see if they have any former Lions on there.
Yeah.
And I think the Colts are the first one that has 0. They have 0 former Lions on their team. So how good can they be? But they do have Jim Bob Cooter.
That's right.
He is their offensive coordinator. If you
He
remember
is.
Jim Bob.
Oh, I remember Jim Bob Cooter. Yeah. The HBO show Ballers, actually, the Miami Dolphins fictional general manager dropped his name as someone they needed to consider looking at for their head coach position. Again, all fictional stuff, but that was Jim Bob Cooter back in the day. I remember that man.
Great name, great football name, Jim Bob Cooter.
There you go. All right. Well, with that, James, I appreciate that nugget of information because I did not know that. Take us into your ref report.
This week, the Lions get the Sean Hockley crew. He is Ed Hockley's son. Been a crew chief for 6 years in the NFL, 11 years total as a referee. Interesting enough, his replay official is Jamie Nicholson, who is a Ferris State grad.
Yeah,
Oh,
Bulldogs.
The umpire of that crew is Terry Killens, who played linebacker in the NFL. He's the only person I think to have ever played in and refereed a Super Bowl. He played in the Super Bowl when the Titans lost to Kurt Warner and the Rams, and he refed last year's Super Bowl. This crew has not done a Lions game since the Christmas Eve 2022 game against the Panthers,
ooh, I remember
which we
that
ended up
game.
bringing up here way too much. But in that game, Carolina got called for 10 penalties. The Lions only got called for 4, so they lost it for a completely different reason. Hockey Lee's crew has called the fewest pass interference calls and illegal contact penalties in last year in 2023. That's held up this year. They only have 11 combined pass interference and defensive holding calls in 9 games. So out of 121 penalties that they've called, only 11 have been for pass interference or on the secondary. What they do call a lot is false starts, 33 in 9 games, and 25 offensive holding calls in 9 games this season. One thing is of note, the Lions have only been called for 63 penalties this year, which puts them in the bottom third of the league. The Colts have only been called for 60.
Oh,
Um, and the Hockey League crew, the other thing that's of interest is in a 2022 divisional playoff game between Tampa Bay and the LA Rams. Hockey League gave Tom Brady the first unsportsmanlike conduct penalty of his career.
better late than never. Nah, I'm not saying he deserved it. I'm just saying, yeah, that's incredible to go that long in your career to then you finally get one there at that point. And yeah, that's like roughing unnecessary roughness on the quarterback, right? Like that doesn't happen very often either.
Yeah, I can't remember what it was, but Brady yelled at him, yelled at like right at the head referee for something, and he immediately just flagged him.
All right. Well, thank you for the ref report, James, and the insights for that. All right, Coach, we'll start with you. What's it going to take for the Lions to win this game, or what do you want to see out of Detroit in this game?
Well, I think again, establish the run for us. Turn AR into one dimension passing, and keep him in the pocket. I think that's again we're going to win the got to win the turnover battle and stuff like that. But again, so basically it's going to be both lines, offensive line, defensive line are going to establish how this game is going to play out, and then how well we stay in our gap responsibilities on defense to keep him in that pocket so he can't run out and throw the ball, run out and turn into a running quarterback, which I think he wants to do. I think he takes a hit and it wakes him up, and I think he feels good and he feels like he's part of the game, and we have to take that away from him.
All right, that'll be interesting to keep an eye on with Alex Anzalone not in there as well. So it'll be a big task there. James, what do you think it's going to take for Lions to win, or what do you want to see out of the Lions?
Yeah, I think Jerry pretty much hit it on the head there. If they can take the run away from Anthony Richardson, and make him a passing quarterback, that is definitely to their benefit. And the trenches are always important to the Lions, so they need to establish there with Laporta back. They'll have one more weapon to attack their defense with. And like what Jerry said, we don't know that they have the weapons on defense to counter all the Lions' weapons on offense.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, Jonathan Taylor was held to 57 yards last week against New York. He went over the 100-yard mark against Buffalo, but Minnesota held him to 48. And the week before that, Houston, he got 105. So if they can do that, if they can limit him, that's been, that's the recipe for the Lions' success, right? And with Richardson being as young of a quarterback as he is, I still think he can make some mistakes against this Lions secondary. You heard Kirby Joseph talk about how he baited Mac Jones into throwing that interception. So those are some things that I think could work well into the Lions, to the Lions' advantage right there. Keeping Jonathan Taylor in check, keeping that running game in check. I think the explosives will be an interesting thing to keep an eye on because, as Coach pointed out, that's something that the Colts like to do, and that's something the Lions pride themselves on taking away. So let's turn this to prediction time then. Coach, what's your what predictions do you have this week?
I think we'll gain them for sure on the ground. I think that we're going to win the turnover battle, and we're going to win the field position battle, which is going to result in good sign for us on the win column.
All right. James, how about you?
I'm going to take a parlay on this one that a safety gets an interception for the Lions, and Zadarius Smith gets a sack.
Okay. Wow. Zadarius Smith sacks 2 weeks in a row is what you'd be going for then, starting a streak there. All right. I don't know how many sacks Zadarius Smith is going to get the rest of this season. I think that maybe in some ways he won't get as many as what people think, but I think his presence is going to be felt in so many ways. I am going to go on the offensive side of this, and I'm going to say Jared Goff and Amon-Ra St. Brown connect for 9 completions, 9 passes. And that would put the streak up to 20. So I don't know. I'm going to go with that as my prediction in this one. Let's turn to some final thoughts. James, the Indianapolis Colts have chosen to go with the all blue uniforms, and I believe they're telling everyone in the crowd to wear blue, because if they don't, all they're going to see is blue from the Lions. So I don't know if the Lions fans are planning on wearing white or they're just going to wear the blue with them. The Colts, they've got to be prepared for a quasi takeover, and I'm going to point out why. If you are to look at ticket prices right now, the Colts Lions game is as low as $203. You can see the Colts and the New York Giants later this year for just $17. Okay. And that $203, I don't think is being driven up by the Indianapolis fan base, because the next highest game is $81 for a Colts game. That's out in Denver. The Colts only have 2 home games left. The Jacksonville game's $33. So you got to be excited. You're going down with some friends. Tell me what some of your expectations are.
Well, I mean, maybe we'll get to see, Jack Fox punt, maybe once. I don't know if you saw that the Lions posted a Jack Fox highlight reel, which is all of his holds on the extra points.
Yes, I did see that.
That was brilliant. Uh, um, but I'm looking forward to seeing Lucas Oil Stadium. I've never been there before. It's where the Big Ten championship game gets played and everything. So I'm gonna go there with some friends. We're gonna go hit some breweries on Saturday in the evening, and some restaurants probably. And I've got a cell phone number from a guy that's a Lions fan who's an Uber driver in Indianapolis. So we will be staying safe.
Nice. That's good. Well, good. That's fun to be part of a takeover. We went to some road games last year. The results, and you went the year before. The results aren't always wins, but whether it's a win or a loss, it's pretty phenomenal to be with other Lions fans in another stadium. And so I wish you safe travels and a great time down there. All right, folks, there is traveling going on. It's that time of the year. James is traveling down to the game. I'm going to be traveling. I am bringing a laptop with me. We do anticipate having our regular our regular recap show after the game, but probably on Monday evening is when we're hoping to do it. But again, I'm going to be traveling as well. I don't know about my internet connection and stuff. And so we're expecting to do that and then have the preview for the Thanksgiving Day matchup against the Chicago Bears for Tuesday. If for some reason we don't have a show, it would be due to technical difficulties. Just want to prepare you for that. But we're excited for both of these, and a lot going on, a lot with everybody. So safe travels. Coach, James, thank you both for being here and talking Lions. Have a fantastic rest of this week and weekend. And we'll be connecting hopefully here before Thanksgiving, and hopefully have some good stuff to talk about with the Lions on Victory Monday. Coach, thanks. Any final words?
Looking forward to the 3 games in 11 days ordeal, right?
For sure. That is for sure. James, how about you? Any final thoughts?
Looking forward to seeing a win in person, and then coming back and being able to tell about it.
Awesome. All right, folks, thank you so much for tuning in. You can find more episodes and content at notthesameoldlions.com. Tell your friends and family about the show. Like and comment on socials. Please subscribe regardless of your listening platform. And until next time, stay gritty, my friends.
This is the story of the one who, as a maintenance specialist for a historic high-rise, knows that vintage charm historically needs constant attention. Which is why, when it's time to upgrade turn-of-the-century mechanicals, they turn to Grainger. With easy access to 1 million-plus products and the scale to deliver when and where you need them. The right tools and supplies are never far away. So the one can keep that vintage building running like new. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.